How's everybody's tummy? We have another awesome presenter for you that's going to keep you wide awake with all the amazing things he's going to talk about. So, I would like to introduce my good friend AJ. And AJ specializes in a lot of different things in the industry. Again, known AJ for I don't even know how many years now. He was my sub-in best man for my wedding, actually, and I would have never been able to get married on my wedding day if it wasn't actually for this man. And he put to use a lot of his production knowledge and skills just to be able to pull my wedding off. He was literally my producer, and he was also my project manager. And yeah, I can't say enough good things about him. So AJ, up to you.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it, Jeff. I think it's been probably a dozen years at this point. Hi, everybody. I'm AJ with Radcup, creative director over there. Today, I want to talk about darts at the board, kind of an abstract adventure of things that have worked for me and how life just keeps changing. The industry keeps changing, and we kind of evolve in what we do from where we came from. So just a little bit to start. This is where we come from, kind of where we are today. Radcup works in a bunch of different areas, but it started essentially in projection mapping. I love arts. It's about collaboration. It's about tons of people working together and just doing stuff that you never could imagine before. So we build big structures and we run around festivals. Sometimes there's astronauts in them. Sometimes it's abstract art pieces that are just using video and light in different ways. I love spectacle and love playing with different aspects of that, whether it's water projection or if it's for a sporting game, another Lombardi Award show. So sometimes it's sculpture design, and sometimes the industry changes and the big stuff doesn't work, so you have to refocus. And that's kind of what I want to take us through a little bit today, is how I fell into it, what I love about it, and how it's going to be an ever-changing thing for the rest of our careers. As technology advances and as we advance. Sometimes there's beautiful things that you think are going to happen, and a lot of those don't, but sometimes you do build really cool stuff. So that's a little bit of us. I've collaborated with a lot of people in this room that are presenting. Corey's going to talk about this amazing thing tomorrow, I believe. And it's been a joy, and I kind of just want to share that today as you're coming out of school and you're just seeing what's possible out there. Whether it's domes or sometimes weird stuff with holograms, you can kind of go a bunch of different directions. So we'll just kind of jump through. There's lots of videos today, so I might skip through a bunch. So I kind of started with one thing, and that's led to all these different worlds. It's kind of all based on technology, but now it's museums and it's augmented reality and it's art exhibits. Sometimes it's corporate events. But for me, I love change, and I get stuck on the same thing. I kind of get bored with it, and it's always nice to kind of create something new. I started in theater. I wanted to be a lighting designer, like a lot of us, I believe. Yeah. And I loved that. I went through school, did masters, and then I got on my first Broadway tour. I was there for about 3 months, and nothing changed. And I didn't realize that part of theater for me. And there's a lot of beauty in theater, and there's a lot of things I loved about it. But for me, shaving 15 seconds out of loadout every day wasn't something I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So I jumped, as soon as that was over, I kind of jumped out and got into production lighting design, which was 10 years ago. So I'm not going to show any pictures because the pictures are terrible, but here's a very old render of stuff we used to do back then. And that lighting got me into programming, got me into something that was faster and changing. And then DL2 showed up, and all of a sudden I could control some video with them, and I had all these more colors to play with. And then we found I was using DMX to network DL2s together, and networks. Didn't know about ArtNet yet. And then all of a sudden we figured all of that out. And all of a sudden we were the high-end systems DL2 guys that would go all around and fix everybody else's shows with video when they were trying to network everything and trying to make the stuff that they said they could do online. And I just kept falling in love with video. From there, we did some stuff. I was at Houston for a long time, did a bunch of the rodeo for many years, and we started getting matrix walls, and we got Hippo media servers. And all of a sudden, I could connect those to my lighting desk, and all of a sudden, stuff was really fun. And then I found projection mapping in Europe. They were doing crazy, crazy stuff over there. So I built a little scale box on my desk, like a little shoebox, and 2 little tiny projectors. I was just playing with that forever. And then we ended up getting a grant from the city, show from a little earlier. It was for the Houston Art Car Parade. And what you can see with this is it was fun, it was spectacle. It was in collaboration with a bunch of artists. But if you look really close at the picture on the right over here, you'll see some lines on the building. So we didn't know that you couldn't project through glass at the time. So the sides we got really well done, and it's midnight the night before the show, and I have paper hanging inside the building, and I didn't know that the glass is clear, and there's a 10% gradient on it, but the light bouncing back and forth, we're all aware, it was dark as hell. So in the middle of the night, we went to the shop, we got all the butcher paper we could find, we all got rigging harnesses, and we stretched rigging across the top of the building, and we papered the front of the building, the entire thing, to make this show happen, because we had never done it. We wanted to see this thing, and then we got through this show meticulously somehow, and then it started pouring rain at midnight right after the show was over, and all the paper melted off the building. So it almost didn't happen, but it's the amazing crew and everybody coming together on these things. So that turned into another year. We did a couple years of that, and it was a really fun exploration. There was definitely created content in the 5 minutes of it. But we were always trying to figure out how to stretch the shows, and we started playing with just music and kind of designers in it, which I'll show you guys a little more in a bit. From there, all this stuff went onto YouTube. That was brand new. 100,000 hits was a lot back then. And we started getting calls for projection mapping because there wasn't a lot in the country. And as Kirsten was so awesomely saying earlier about budgets, we didn't know what we were doing, and we agreed to a budget a third of the other biggest company out there. And we got ourselves into this mess for Scream Awards. So this was my first time in California. And again, we're trying to figure out all the steps of this workflow. And we built these huge towers. And they had 40Ks or 30Ks at the time. We requested 400 amps of power. The power guys didn't trust video guys at the time. So they only brought one power plant for us. And we couldn't turn on the other half of the system. So that was 2 days later, and I wasn't really sure how to talk to Stewfish Design because they had built this huge, huge set. I was really in love with them from all their stuff in the past, so I didn't really tell them when the set was 2 feet too wide and 4 feet too tall from all of our maps that were there. So we spent a week and a half hand mapping in the set. We had to call Hippo and get the warp map from 6 points up to 48 points. And by the end of the week, you could actually see the entire CAD rendering, the warp map that we had to do by hand. And then it rained every night. I didn't know that it missed it every night up there as well, so everything would go out of focus every day. And we finally got the show together, which came out fantastic in the rehearsal shots you're seeing here. But then on the day of the show, the lighting designer wasn't too keen on having projection all over his set. So they turned on 12 wash fixtures in white to blow out our show so that we'd never be able to do this again. So it looked great at this point. But again, it's that workflow. And I was a brand new kid coming into this, and I was just saying yes to everything. So we tried to get through this thing. But it was a lot of fun and a hell of a learning experience of when you jump in too early before you know everything, things can happen quicker than you can control them. But it came together. We had a fun audience, and it was probably one of the most spectacular experiences I've ever had working in production. From there, projection mapping was kind of our thing for a while. And it was brand new in the States. And we worked with a lot of large companies. All the Fortune 500s had never seen anything like this before. And it was working great. We did these massive shows, which were a lot of fun. And we planned them. We went all over LA. We'd find different locations, work with the clients. This example here is called Traffic Jam. The company was called CoStar, and they're the largest real estate marketer for commercial properties online. And their idea was, if you're not on their website, then you don't exist. So they wanted us to make a building disappear for them, which was a task in itself. But we finally found a location that doesn't exist anymore. There's 3 buildings in front of it now. So the whole idea was we had to set up this gag. They also wanted to have a band in front of it. And it's working with clients and expectations. We had been talking to KISS at the time because they wanted us to burn down the Hollywood sign. That's actually happened twice. The Chamber of Commerce never lets you do anything with the Hollywood sign. But they loved this stage design we came up with, and they were willing to play the show. But then the client came back and said they weren't really a KISS company. So we ended up having Train come in after that. So kind of changed the entire aspect of the production. But what was fun with this was, because we wanted to have this building in the background, and it was all about misdirection. We kind of based it on when the Statue of Liberty when Copperfield made it disappear, kind of have the building move to the side and you can't see anything for a minute. So we had this massive stage in front of it, all ground supported with kind of candy cane structures. And when it came together, again, a lot of these are a little old, but it was another beautiful experience. I had the flu this entire week, so you can never plan what's going on. I was melting in the chair. All of our heavy equipment had all of the batteries stole out of it when it was first dropped on stage, because we're in downtown LA. But these are older videos. Let's skip to the end here. So when the show happened, we had this fun mix of the two. And again, some of this stuff is more corporate-based mapping arts, but it's kind of tended where we've leaned to over the years. That allows us to have fun with a lot of big fun toys. On this building, we ended up putting 400 pieces of cardboard in each of the windows to match the colors of everything. We went up on the roof of it to record what was behind the building. And then once we got through it a little bit here, there was a big misdirection with some strobe lights that we had to the side and on stage. And what that allowed was the audience to kind of look away, be blinded for a second. And then when the effect happens here, you slowly see through the building for a minute. And it was a fun effect. All for 300 people at a private stage after 6 months of production. So those things kind of led to a lot more of these silly car-based things. So we did a little bit of Art Basel over the years. Put that down a little bit. And again, these corporate things ended up becoming so corporate that nobody would watch them. We'd play these things like a commercial over and over, and people would just walk by the building once we, old shows. So it was these fun, really high energetic pieces that were in the end just selling a car or selling some kind of merchandise, and we kind of started losing our soul in all this, and it didn't really work in the end. I mean, people loved it; they'd stay by, but they wouldn't hang out at the events. So we do something with a crazy 8-bit stuff flying around with a fun soundtrack that's created, but in the end, we're advertising a Hyundai, which only works for so long and kind of like what your soul likes to do. So that kind of started sending us in different directions after this kind of stuff would happen. And what we'd end up doing is between those shows, we would just do fun mapping stuff. And again, it was fun. It was fun created stuff. A lot of this was just on the Hippo content or stuff that you could download from back in the day pretty easy and quickly, all low-res HD stuff. But we turned these buildings into just art pieces. And then once an hour, we'd play the silly commercial that they paid for everything to be there with. And we'd ended up getting a much larger audience than any of the clients' expectations were about the video. But it allowed us to have fun the whole time and kind of continue along that path where where it was kind of just, again, soulless without anything else happening there. Which was a good direction for us. And we actually started having a lot more fun in design after that. And then it called for different approaches because we weren't working in the corporate land anymore. And we started working more in the festival circuit. This is a piece that we loved from many years ago it was called Mirage. The lead artist at Coachella, this was his dream piece, was to build a house, mid-century modern, on the middle of the field. But he wanted it to tell a story. And we wanted to have a journey and be a bunch of different locations. But there was almost zero budget for it. And so we had a lot of the stuff donated. VER was amazing, helped us with projectors. We had to bury all the cables in the dirt. And we had to figure out how to make content work with a budget of 10,000 without being able to place a lot of stuff together. At the time, Hippo had a thing called Region Mapper that made things very easy to do, where we could just take pieces of content, kind of like puzzle pieces, and we could layer them together and actually create a puzzle of them without having to do a full UV 3D object of it. So we had about 7 layers of different outside the buildings. All the windows had furniture that would go inside of them, and then we green screened a bunch of our friends running through the windows at different locations. And we would tell stories. One was people partying in the house. Another one was just children running through the house when the parents aren't paying attention and terrorizing everything and destroying everything. Other times the blinds would go up and down and you couldn't tell what was going on in there. And then we actually had a pool below it that we built, which was just made out of 1/4-inch plywood, which ended up giving us this beautiful hue to the bottom of it that made the rest of the house glow. But when people were hanging out around it, they ended up thinking it was a real pool for a while. They would try stepping in it, but again, it's Coachella, so everybody's having a good time. Towards the end of the night, I put a little tiny sine wave on the whole house just to see if anybody was paying attention to it. And again, this is fun and silly times. You know, we're collaborating. It's just doing huge art pieces with a bunch of wonderful friends in the desert. Which, as it was coming together, again, we're learning stuff about being in different locations all the time. We're just trying to push the envelope. A huge sandstorm came through on the second weekend and destroyed all the projectors. I ended up with, I think it was an $80,000 bill for cleaning from the rental company after that. So the project made zero money, but it looks good on the portfolio pieces. So you do some of those sometimes. There's the fun pool. And that kind of stuff became fun. So we started doing a lot more of those. We built the astronauts in collaboration with some other friends, built huge snails. And that kind of continued what I enjoyed doing about all of this, which was working really well. And then the world changed again, and big projection art kind of was falling out of fashion for a little bit. And the huge building stuff we got from time to time, but it's more city celebrations. And so we ended up having to go a completely different direction with everything we do, which is now we do a lot of interactive Unity game design based around projections or based around different technology. So a lot of this is our interactive touch wall stuff we do now. So it's all conductive ink, lots of Raspberry Pis, had to learn how to program everything. Everything's using that mapper, nice and affordable. One of my favorite tools out there now when we're not doing huge shows. And so we could link all those together and we could start creating experiences for people that were a little more personable, where actually we can also get data for our clients. So a lot of this is based in more in the corporate world, but what's fun for us on this side is that we're taking these weird concepts from these corporations where they're not even sure what they're trying to explain, and we get to make sense of those in a visual fashion where we can bring people into these events and kind of transfer their ideas in a fun way where people are actually engaged. And it takes it out of the corporate boring world in a lot of ways. So there's some fun Indiegogo stuff over the years, some Toshiba stuff. But again, it's still using the base that we love about projection mapping and using it in just different ways as budgets allow over time. And that's been a great joy of being able to change those. From there, we started doing these even bigger ones. So now those are in. We're taking all of those technologies, the touch technologies and the projection technologies, and we're now linking those into little worlds. So this project called the Community Builder came to us from Caterpillar, and all they said is they wanted something like a game of life that people could walk through. They wanted to. It was for their new foundation where they were trying to figure out about water conservation, and they wanted their audience to kind of see the different worlds where water conservation needed to happen. And they wanted them to make choices to figure out where they should put all this amazing funding to. So what we did was created this game for them with a bunch of different stations. It had RFID built into it. So at the beginning, you type your name into it and all the data. And then you got a card that was personalized to you. And you can go to all 5 stations. And it would track how much time it takes you to think about them, what your decision tree was. And then at the end of that, we kind of brought together all these different aspects where the client ended up knowing where they should put the money to in the end. Unfortunately, this was during COVID. At the very beginning, we were in Vegas putting this wonderful show together, which was supposed to tour to 32 colleges that summer, so they could get a lot more data and a lot more decision making. And we were 2 days into the show when the whole world shut down and everybody needed to get back to their home countries. So we had air conditioning and hand sanitizer. Nobody was wearing masks yet. But they shut the show down 2 days in. Everybody left. They took away the hand sanitizer, shut off the air conditioning, and we had to load the show out. So it's now been sitting in a box for about 3.5 years. We don't even know where it is at this point. But it was a fun experience to put this much stuff together. Just the debugging, and again, working with the collaboration, just working with the programmers, the artists that brought it into it, the scenic designers that we brought into it. And again, it's figuring out what works in a budget. The reason you see so many TVs around the sides is they didn't have enough money for LED screen. So we bought 35 60-inch TVs from B&H at like $400 a piece. And I had to figure out where to put plastic for like 3 weeks after we unpacked everything. But it turned into this fun world. All of those screens are just driven by a Mad Mapper rack. There's 6 Unity systems on there, and the whole thing works. And it was affordable for the client, and we were able to come up with those solutions. So those are the things that worked over time, and those are the things that we've been going through. Kind of want to focus now on things that haven't worked over the years, or things that we have done that have set us in weird directions, and we've had to like reinvent ourselves again. One of the things that's been hitting for years is all these experience rooms. I've designed probably 15 museums over the years. We've gone through renders, we've gone through everything. This is an example of a children's hospital that helps with peanut allergies, one of the only ones in the country. And it was supposed to be an interactive room where the kids could play and learn about their allergy. And we've done a lot of these where it's kind of all based on the Meow Wolf kind of world of going through stuff. But we found out that our clients have no idea what any of this costs. So once we get through rendering and design, and we're like, here's the budget, nobody actually can go any further from there. So that was an area that went a little weird. Another one was we had all of this success with Energy City in Houston, which Corey's going to tell you about tomorrow, which is a beautiful piece in Houston that's been running for 10 years with 32 projectors. But I've designed probably 10 of those around the world now. So this one was supposed to be in Mexico. This one was supposed to be in China. And again, both of those projects were stalled over the course of the last blip. But again, it's just educating clients on what's possible before we go down that full path of design, before we do all the work for it. Because the world's changed again, where these budgets were here and people knew what they were asking for, they're just not here anymore. And even if we can get past the design stage, once it goes up the channels, to a city center or to the country, and they have to sign off on it, they're finding that those budgets aren't there anymore as well. So we've all kind of had to educate ourselves what we're spending time on. Again, it's, we tried doing huge water shows for a while. That was another area that didn't work. And what these were is, it's the RFPs for cities and spending all of the time going through that. I mean, if you're designing a skyscraper and you're in a competition, you have to build the skyscraper already, and you have to fund the whole skyscraper. And what we found is, unless we know exactly what we're bidding on and asking the questions, up front how many people are bidding on this, what's the actual budget for the show. It just turns into a lot of wheel spinning. So we've had to become a lot more careful in those designs, so we don't kind of overstretch what the studio is capable of doing, knowing what our annual budget is for doing these kind of things. Other things that have done that is this crazy quarry that we're trying to work on, where we've designed these crazy walkways that go over the whole thing and projection mapping the entire thing. But again, these projects don't exist anymore. Along with that is festival design. We were asked to put these amazing wings on the Burning Man a couple years ago. And we designed the whole thing. We had hydraulic systems and crazy holographic material, all tested to go. Had an entire budget, and when it came down to it, they decided that budget wasn't worth the 3 minutes before they burned him to the ground. Because his arms are only up for like 10 minutes. So again, it's pulling back from those things where we want to design and we are artists, and we just, every time the phone rings, we kind of run with the thing. So now we just have to be a lot more careful in that world. Along with that, there's things I want to do. There's repeating calls that come in all the time. One's the Statue of Liberty. We've been asked to do it 3 times over the years. We designed it for the Army. We designed it for the Navy. Most recently, we were asked by the state to put a mask on them for COVID, which again, we'd love to do this at some point, but there's the coup d'etat kind of fun stuff that I'm still open to trying to design these things all the time, knowing hopefully they will one day. We haven't gotten there yet. So that's the things that were, but again, there's always something new you can do. And so we answer the phone whenever it rings, and we're always open to whoever calling. And we give everybody the time of day because we're never sure what's actually going to happen. So last year we got this random call. There was a script for a reality series. I've never done a reality series. I don't really watch reality series, but they had a blank in it that they didn't know how to fill. And it was supposed to be this room. There's always a confessional kind of room where they say what they did or what the idea was. But this show is called Cosmic Love because it's based on astrology. And so they had to have kind of a Wizard of Oz chamber where they were told by somebody what was going on with it. So this ended up being a back and forth for about 6 months, going through different designs, different renders. What could this world be? What could the budget afford for this? Where could it be? We didn't know what city it was going to be in. I think it was supposed to be in Hawaii. Then it moved somewhere else. We ended up being on on top of a horse corral. I don't know if you've ever done a show on top of a horse corral, but it's not the best location for air to breathe or for equipment to live in, especially when you're there for 7 weeks. But it turned into this fun collaboration again. We worked with Pufferfish. They wanted the biggest ball that they've ever done, but they only had 3 weeks to do it. So the guys pulled off a 200 millimeter, a 2 meter ball? No, it was 4.5 feet. But they made it work. They shipped it to us. It was like one of those if it scratches, the whole show's over. If it's dropped in shipping, the whole show's over. We had a backup tiny one. Nobody wanted that one. But they ended up getting us one that worked. We ended up putting it into this design. This is in collaboration with another awesome company in Canada, Go2 Productions, and a couple other local companies that helped a lot with it. Four Wall helped a bunch with a lot of the gear. It ended up being this 360 room with projection mapping with amazing content that kind of went into the whole thing. And within 6 weeks, after they called us, we went through tons of different renders. We ended up making this actual room for them, which I'm still can't believe that we pulled off. And again, it's things you never know what you're going to get into, and I don't know what's around the corner. It's fun to plan verticals, and it's good to be part of something. But just from a pure art standpoint, the things that keep me interested are just these random things that keep happening. So this is on TV right now. Just premiered 2 weeks ago.
Didn't need to go to the ends of the earth to find
if you want to watch some reality
I am
series.
the Astro Chamber. I will guide 4 singles to find their perfect match using their astrological birth charts.
16 people might go walk through here. One of those could be.
It was filmed in Malibu.
Cheers to finding love in the stars.
Very, very long drive every day from where we were.
Astrology offers rare insight into our personalities. It's time for your first astrological
So
match.
the Astro Chamber actually became a character in the thing. If you look at the closed caption that says Astro Chamber talking every time it's astrology. I haven't watched through the whole thing yet. The first ones are pretty cool. It was neat collaborating with the production companies on this.
Shut up. He gives me butterflies. I
There's
could open up
400
to him,
people on
but
set at
he's
every one of
trying to
these,
play
even though it
games,
doesn't look like it.
and I just don't have time for that.
But it was crazy to
Don't
see it all
mess
come
with the
together.
wheel.
I'm Maria's first match, fellow Capricorns. I understand them. You have such a pretty smile. Got the glossy lips? Come here. What?
The clock is ticking. It's Scorpio season.
It is Scorpio season. I have to send someone home. I'm freaking out.
Is this real for you or not?
I'm gonna blow a gasket.
The astral chamber got me messed up.
It's time to make the ultimate decision.
Will you marry me?
I'm ready to hand my faith over
I think
to the
somebody got
universe
married.
and live my fairy tale.
We are sexually compatible.
Oh, thank the stars.
So you never know what you're going to get into. That's kind of the journey I've been through. I'm looking forward to the next steps in the next years. The world seems to be opening up a lot more. Again, it started with a love of projection mapping and doing buildings, and it just changes every day. So I guess what I say is just be open to wherever your career takes you, and you'll be surprised. And always say yes, and always try and learn something every day. It's kind of what's got me going on it. And thank you. Any questions?
No questions.
No worries. Thank you.
Does it get hot here?
Awesome.